Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Authority's 2018 Annual General Meeting. I'm Glenda Geese, and I'm Chair of the Authority's Board of Directors. I will be your MC for today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the ancestral traditional territories of the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, and in particular, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, whose territory we are gathering on today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. This acknowledgement is particularly important today because June 21st is National Aboriginals Peoples Day. I would like to thank you for joining us, both in person and on the webcast. We have about 100 people in the room and another 150 joining us online. Before we begin, I would like to address a few housekeeping items. For those in the room, washrooms are located out the doors to my left. In the event of an emergency, please proceed to one of the doors marked with an exit sign. For those attendees joining us online, please note the contact information for technical assistance on your screen. The email address for you to participate in the Q&A part of today's meeting is also on your screen. Joining me on the stage are Frank Denton, the Authority's CEO, and Patrick Moran, the Authority's Registrar, who will each provide information about the Authority's 2017 activities following my remarks. Our annual general meetings are an opportunity for the Authority to be accountable to and transparent with those we oversee and regulate, with our stakeholders, with those who oversee us at the Government of Ontario, and ultimately with the people of Ontario. I'm pleased that so many of you are interested in our work, supporting a transition to individual producer responsibility, and ultimately contributing to the circular economy. Individual producer responsibility and the circular economy are concepts with growing importance among many governments, businesses, and citizens who are realizing that we need better ways to manage garbage, that there is value to be reclaimed in the things we throw out, and that businesses have a role in managing the products and packaging they supply to consumers. There are numerous examples of businesses seeing the value in the things we throw out, adopting innovative approaches to collect and manage those used products and packaging, and finding new economic opportunities while delivering better environmental outcomes. Successive governments have recognized the importance of diverting recyclables from the waste stream to both protect the environment and manage municipal and private sector costs. In 2002, the government of the day passed legislation to create Waste Diversion Ontario to ensure producers play an active role in reducing, diverting, and paying for waste resulting from products and packaging they supply. The Authority and the legislation that created it are the natural evolution of this broad approach based on lessons learned. On November 30th, 2016, the Waste-Free Ontario Act came into law with all-party support, enacting the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act and the Waste Diversion Transition Act, creating the legislative framework for individual producer responsibility, establishing the Authority, and mandating us to play an important role in supporting Ontario's transition to a circular economy. Where our economy is linear, we take resources, make them into products and packaging, and then dispose of them, often after the resources have been used only for a brief time. This model is not sustainable, economically or environmentally. Where our economy is circular, products and packaging are designed first for reduction and then to be reused and recycled. Once we are done with the products and packaging, they are reintegrated back into the economy through reuse, recycling, or composting. We all need to change our thinking about garbage and the products and package that become garbage. Part of that rethinking is how to recover those products and packaging and the resources and embedded value in those resources from consumers. Rethinking garbage, and in doing so, moving from a linear to a circular economy, will make Ontario's economy stronger through new business opportunities, more jobs, and a more secure source of raw materials. The idea of individual producer responsibility is a simple one. Whoever makes it and sells it is responsible for what happens to it when it is no longer useful. Under this framework, producers and their customers will pay for the costs of resource recovery instead of taxpayers. Under the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act, businesses will be held accountable to deliver the environmental outcomes established by the provincial government. These environmental outcomes are intended to tackle our waste problem. On average, each Ontario resident generates over 800 kilograms of waste every year. 75% of that waste ends up in landfill, and only 25% is recycled, and these rates haven't changed much in the past decade. To boost the provincial diversion performance from the current 25%, the Waste Diversion Transition Act provides for the wind-up of current waste diversion programs and industry funding organizations, and designation of those materials under the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act. The current waste diversion programs are the Used Tires Program operated by Ontario Tire Stewardship. This program will cease operations on December 31st of this year. The Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment Program operated by Ontario Electronic Stewardship. The WE program has been directed to wind up midway through 2020 on June 30th. The Municipal Hazardous or Special Waste Program operated by Stewardship Ontario. The MHSW program has been directed to wind up at the end of 2020. And the Blue Box program, also operated by Stewardship Ontario. In the first full year of operations, the authority made important progress establishing sound governance policies and practices that will ensure the authority operates efficiently and in line with best practices. We also put in place policies and procedures to strengthen financial management and controls, to govern privacy and access to information, and to deliver services in French. We hired the core team to lead the delivery of our mandate, including most of the executive management team. Creating an efficient organization is essential for the authority to effectively deliver its mandate. This requires a strong board of directors to provide oversight and strategic direction, supported by a dedicated management team and staff. We started 2017 with an initial board of 5 members appointed by the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Through an extensive recruitment process, we elected an additional 6 members. I'm honored to have been appointed chair by the Minister and then elected chair by the fully constituted board. I would like to take a moment to introduce the board, and I would ask that they stand as I call out their names. Tom Wright, Vice Chair. Joyce Barretto, who is our Secretary and is out of province today, and Ken Kaywall, who is our Treasurer, and he is also out of the province today. David Brezer. Sakib Chima. Andrea Nempton. Robert Poirier, Rajesh Sharma, Mary Shenstone, and Nidhi Tandon. I am grateful for the skills and expertise each of you brings and your individual and collective commitment to good governance and progressive leadership of the authority. This group of people, working closely with staff, have set the authority's vision and mission. Our vision is a circular economy today for a waste-free tomorrow. And our mission is enforce producer responsibility and advocate for the circular economy to spur innovation and protect the environment. We are joined today by a number of our ministry colleagues, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge their role in supporting the Ontario government in setting policy direction and developing the regulatory framework. They have also provided invaluable assistance to the authority as we work to develop the programs to implement that framework. On behalf of the board and staff of the authority, I'd like to thank everyone in the policy branch and the Minister's office for supporting us in our first year of operations. As an administrative authority of the Ontario government, our role is to execute the policy and legislative framework established by the government. As such, the working relationship with the Minister and Ministry staff is key to the organization's success. With the recent election and change in government, we are committed to continuing the collaborative relationship with the provincial government. We look forward to working with the new Minister when he or she is appointed next week. As you'll hear from Frank, during our first year, we set the foundations for engagement with our partners in industry, municipalities, First Nations, the environmental advocacy sector, and other stakeholders. We held sequential rounds of consultation and meetings and listened closely to the feedback we received to ensure that our decisions reflected a broad range of perspectives. As you'll hear from Pat, we've also made progress this past year in developing the registry and building the authority's compliance capacity. Authority staff are gearing up right now to launch the registry. On July 3rd, less than 2 weeks from now, we will begin registering tire producers and producer responsibility organizations. This is an important milestone that demonstrates Ontario's commitment and progress towards individual producer responsibility. The registry, along with the authority's compliance function, is a key part of the authority's legislative mandate. The registry will hold information that will be used by Pat and his team to hold producers responsible for their products and packaging. The registry is also the mechanism on which the authority will publish aggregated and non-confidential information to inform you of the province's progress towards its diversion goals. The registry will continue to be developed to accommodate we and MHSW as the ministry develops these regulations. There is still much work to be done to realize the vision of a waste-free Ontario. But the foundations, relationships, and momentum established in 2017 have positioned us well and will carry us forward in 2018 and beyond. I'd like to now invite Frank to the podium to provide further details on our work in 2017. He will be followed by Pat, who will provide an overview of the Registry Project and compliance activities over the past year. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda, and thank you all for being here on this beautiful day. It's the first day of summer. This is a great venue. I see they brought the blinds down so we can't see that sun, but for those who are on the webinar, it's a great venue that we got this year, better than a windowless basement. I think we had it last year. And it's very cost effective. I think this was about as cheap as we could find. When at last year's AGM, I hadn't started my job yet. I was just an observer, but I met a number of people, and people kept saying, "You're coming in at a very interesting time." And I wasn't quite sure what they meant, but I have a better idea now. It's been a very, very interesting year and an eventful year. And I speak for myself and my team, who I'll introduce, and the board, that this is we feel truly honored to be part of this change that's going to drive economic and environmental outcomes. As you all know, we're in the early stages of a transition in how we manage garbage resulting from consumer goods in Ontario. It's going to take time and effort from business, from government, from us. It's going to depend a lot on how businesses adapt. In the last year, we have heard many diverse perspectives on how these challenges should be managed. Most people I've talked to, not everybody, but most people have very strong views about how this transition should go forward. I'm not hearing a lot about whether it should go forward, a lot about how. The policy direction is about and a new government. We will continue to report to the Minister of Environment, and we will do everything we can in the coming months and years to support the new government. That is our fundamental job. We'll be giving our best advice when we're asked, and we'll be implementing the direction we receive as efficiently and effectively as possible. So it's quite a packed room, and I think that's because how we fulfill our role is very important to how people run their businesses and their organizations. The businesses we regulate pay our fees, and how we apply the regulations has an impact on how you run your businesses. How we operate is also going to affect how effective Ontario is in meeting the environmental objectives set out in the regulatory framework that we are charged with administering. This is going to be a theme through my remarks and Pat's. Success depends fundamentally on the businesses understanding what they need to do to comply with the new rules. We have an important role in that. Others in this room have an important role in that. There's a lot of change coming, a lot to contend with. So helping everyone understand how that happens is fundamental to success. We fully intend to be a regulator, and we are now a regulator, that understands the costs, excuse me, just pausing for water. We want to be a regulator that understands the costs and the administrative burdens that regulations impose on businesses. A regulator that's committed to making it as easy as possible for businesses to meet their obligations by being effective in how we communicate, how we build awareness, how we educate. We want to be a regulator that understands the importance of maintaining a level playing field, and a regulator that never loses sight of the environmental and the economic goals that are driving these changes. So I'd like to cover three things today about how we're building the authority to be an effective and cost-efficient regulator. First, I'm going to talk about how we responded to the Minister's directions over the last, in 2017 and beyond, including our work on the wind-up of the used tire program and the amended Blue Box program plan. Secondly, I want to give an overview, excuse me, frog in my throat. I'm pausing for another glass of water, another sip of water. I was saying to Glenda, I don't really need water when I speak. It's just not something I do. So it's a good thing I have this glass of water here. Where was I? So I'm going to provide an overview of the authority's financial performance last year, and finally I want to highlight some of the work we did collaboratively and the relationships that we have built between the authority and our many stakeholders. But I will first start off with a couple of important acknowledgements, starting with my gratitude for the strategic oversight we're getting from a board. We've had a full board in place since last November. It's a strong board. We have vigorous discussions. They test us, and they provide us support, and they help us succeed as a management team and as an organization. I'm particularly grateful for the leadership that Glenda's providing. Many of you have known her for many years or decades, and she's a superb chair, and she is a great advisor to the board. I also want to introduce my executive management team, Pat Moran, our registrar, Noah Gitterman, who joined us a couple of months ago as the Director of Legal Services, Wilson Lee, our Director of Communications and Stakeholder Relations. I think Wilson, or maybe it was Ellen, picked this beautiful venue. Sandra Montague, our Director of Finance and Administration, and we do have a rather complicated financial system that we're working our way through. John Pernard, our Director of Information and Information Technology, and Jeff Rathbone, our Director of Transition. I should have asked you to stand, but you can see their faces. They're a good-looking group, as you can see. The seven of us came together last summer as strangers. We didn't know each other at all. And one of the things I take great pleasure in at work is how we've come together as a team, the executive team and the people we've hired. It's a strong energy at the team, a very devoted group of people, and it's a pleasure to work with them. We have a small staff. They're small. We're going to stay small. They're accomplished. They're passionate. They're dedicated, and they are very enthusiastic about delivering on our vision and mission. So I'll talk now about the directions we got, some of the work we did. We started 2017 with the first wind-up letter issued under the Waste Diversion Transition Act. The minister's letter directed the wind-up of the used tires program on December 31st, 2018, which, as a number of people reminded me, is just around the corner. A lot needs to happen before then. And that will be followed by the wind-up of Ontario Tire Stewardship. Over the past year, we worked with OTS in the tire sector on the development and approval of that wind-up plan. As always, the test for the authority and my board was whether the plan met the requirements in the Act and the Minister's direction. That's our touchstone. Everything we do is guided by Minister's direction and legislation. OTS submitted its wind-up plan on November 30th last year. After we consulted on it, the authority approved it with conditions. That was approved in April. I'm going to pause and talk about one of those conditions because I think it highlights key objectives that we're mandated to deliver, and that's related to the OTS Treadmarks IT system. The authority decided to make Treadmarks an open source platform available to everyone involved in resource recovery in tires in Ontario, and that decision was based on the minister's direction to avoid preferential treatment and avoid. As we worked through the first program wind-up, we worked very closely with OTS to make sure that each step and each decision aligned with requirements of the Act. I want to acknowledge the work of Andrew Horseman, who's here today. We have learned a lot from Andrew. We've worked collaboratively. We'll continue to learn. It's been very helpful. And Patrick Shea, the administrator who was appointed last September, who is not available today to be here today. Under the new system for tires and future materials, a new fee structure is going to replace the current fee structure. So I'll talk about that for a moment. Today, as you know, we charge stewards indirectly through the cost recovery from the industry funding organizations and the industry stewardship organizations, and they in turn charge the stewards. So we're recovering indirectly. Under the new system, we will instead be charging fees directly to the businesses we regulate. So we had to design a new fee structure. We consulted extensively on a fee policy, a fee methodology, and then we used that to design the specific fee structure for tires beginning this year. Our goals were to be transparent in setting that process. We learned that was one of our first, if not our first consultation. We were learning how to consult as a new organization. That was our goal, to be clear and transparent, to set fees that are reasonable and reflect the authority's costs, to provide financial stability to us, and to provide fee predictability to those paying the fees. It wasn't surprising that businesses were very engaged. If you ask people how would you like us to charge you fees, they will give you their very best advice vigorously. We worked hard to be responsive to that advice. We also work closely with our ministry partners to support their development. Pat's going to talk to you about the registry, but we learned very quickly that the regulation that the government produced and the registry that we're building for tires are highly interdependent. The registry has to be completely aligned with the regulation to support the implementation. And that required our team to work closely with the ministry to ensure that the registry delivers exactly what is set out in that tires regulation. And that registry is fundamental to the objectives of the legislation. Everybody here, everybody involved in waste diversion knows about the data gaps, the data challenges that we collectively face. Over time, we are certain that the registry is going to be a key enabler to addressing those challenges. And it's also going to support the government in making evidence-based policy decisions. And I've heard lots of people talk about how important it is that those regulations, that those targets be set based on real evidence, and we'll be able to help in that regard. So the other minister's direction we received was on the Blue Box program. Last August, the minister issued direction to both the authority and Stewardship Ontario to work collaboratively to develop an amended Blue Box program plan. That letter built on an accord that had been reached between stewards and municipalities on moving the full cost of the program to stewards instead of the 50-50 sharing, along with the responsibility to take over, deliver the program. Under the legislation, Stewardship Ontario was required to develop and submit a draft amended plan to us at the authority for my board's review and approval. Over last fall, we supported Stewardship Ontario as they engaged with all the stakeholders, stewards, municipalities, First Nations, the waste management industry, environmental, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders. And from those discussions, as most or all of you know, Stewardship Ontario posted a draft amended plan in December. That was not well received by a number of stakeholders. Many found the consultation process was too compressed. Ultimately, Stewardship Ontario did not submit a draft amended plan to the authority, and therefore my board did not assess a plan and did not submit a plan to the minister. There have been some ongoing discussions, but as of today, there's no draft amended plan before the authority, and we're all waiting to see what happens next. I do want to thank everybody who participated in that exercise. It was compressed. It put a lot of pressure on people, not least of Stewardship Ontario and the stewards of municipalities. We heard a lot of very strongly held divergent views, which seems common in this sector, but everybody, I believe, operated in good faith to try to further the interests of those that they were representing. The second thing I want to cover today is an overview of our financial performance in 2017. Under our operating agreement with the minister, our budget is required to be segregated between activities related to the Waste Diversion Transition Act and activities related to the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act. We ended the fiscal year with $1.79 million in net assets on our balance sheet, compared to $620,000 the previous year. This increase was largely due to the contributions to our reserve. We're gradually building a prudent reserve. We're required to maintain a reserve at no more than 50% of our budget. Our WDTA-related expenses last year were $4.3 million compared to $3.8 million in the previous year. And that increase is related primarily to costs associated with responding to the Minister's direction on the used tire program and the amended Blue Box program plan. The authority's WDTA-related expenses were covered through charges to the industry funding organizations, the industry stewardship organizations, and our RRCEA-related expenses were $505,000 compared to $39,000 in the previous year. And that increase is attributable to the RRCEA-related startup activities last year. The recovery of the RRC-related expenses in 2017 was deferred. We didn't have an ability to recover in 2017. Those expenses will be recovered from obligated parties in 2018 and future years. And as additional RRCEA regulations come into force, we expect that the proportion of our costs recovered through charges to industry funding organizations and industry stewardship organizations will decline, as you can see on that chart, and the proportion collected through fees on parties obligated under the RRCEA will increase. So additional details on our financial and operation performance can be found in our 2017 annual report, which is on our website. It's published on June the 1st. And that includes the performance of the waste diversion programs we currently oversee and our corporate scorecard. So it won't have escaped notice of the businesses who pay our fees that our budget is growing. I want to point out that the authority's fees are a tiny fraction of the fees that stewards have been paying to their IFOs and their ISOs. We are a small organization. We intend to stay small. Certainly not in our interest to grow any larger than necessary to deliver on our mandate. But we have a larger mandate than Waste Diversion Ontario. We need to be a somewhat larger organization. We need the resources to deliver on that mandate. Some people have told me the authority needs more resources. Right? We need more to be able to deliver on our mandate. And I've also heard the view, more from the producer side, I think, that we're too big, or we're growing too big. I intend to keep the authority as lean as possible, and I know that people in this room will do everything they can to hold me to account on that. But we can't undertake our regulatory role. We're a regulator now. We can't build this registry. We can't run this registry. Those are two very significant new functions that we've been given. We can't do that without people to do the work and the resources. The third point I want to address is how we work with our stakeholders. So we established a set of corporate values for our organization over the last year. Those values speak to the importance of respectful dialogue, collaboration, and transparency. Those are words we're all familiar with. They're important words, but they're just words until you act on them. We want to be and we want to be seen as a regulator that supports and enables businesses to meet their obligations. We want to be and we want to be seen to be as an authority that is always focused on our mandate and is always delivering on the direction we receive from the government. We have a clear mandate. It's a focused mandate. That's what we're delivering on. We want to be and we want to be seen to be as an organization that makes every effort to work with our stakeholders. We see our stakeholders as partners. We see them as experts that we need to learn from. We see them as people we have to work with collaboratively to advance the circular economy and shape a new marketplace. So much of what is happening depends upon the marketplace adapting to the new framework. We need to support that. We can't make it happen. We can support it. Our goal is to have a positive impact on the evolving marketplace, strive for a level playing field among producers and service providers. I've been very grateful for the advice that I've received. My team is grateful for the advice we've received over the last year from the people and the businesses that we regulate and that we affect. I especially appreciate the criticisms that we received. I haven't met anyone who hasn't been shy about speaking their mind. We learn from those criticisms. We want to understand how you think. We understand how what we're doing is impacting on you and your businesses. Everyone in this room and everyone obligated under the new framework and everyone on the webinar is on a steep learning curve. There's been a lot of talk about that just in the last hour since people arrived here. We are in this together, and we need to support and learn from each other. I'm very excited about the partnership, about the journey we have embarked on, and on the future of towards a waste-free Ontario. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it now to Pat, who's going to provide more details on the development of the registry and the compliance program that we're building. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and good morning, everyone. As Frank and Glenda have both noted in their remarks, 2017 was a foundational year for the authority in many, many ways. As registrar since joining the authority just under a year ago, and I can't believe it's just under a year given how much we got done, my focus has been on getting the foundation in place for the compliance function. And this has entailed two key initiatives. One, building the registry, of course, and two, building the compliance team. Let me start with the registry. The authority is required under the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act to develop and operate an online registry. And we started by engaging technology specialists to conduct an assessment of the existing IT systems that are used by industry funding organizations here in Ontario, as well as those used in other jurisdictions, to see if they could be adapted for our use. The conclusion was that it would be more cost-effective to build our own registry system designed specifically to meet Ontario's requirements, and so that's what we've proceeded to do. The Registry Project kicked off last October with the selection of PricewaterhouseCoopers as our IT solutions partner, and some of them are present here today. We chose Salesforce, a flexible and configurable customer relationship management system, as our registry platform. Building the registry on Salesforce provided a great opportunity for us. There's no legacy IT issues to deal with. It's a high-performing and market-tested platform, and it has demonstrated robust data security features. The registry is effectively the mechanism that will operationalize individual producer responsibility here in Ontario. This is where obligated parties are going to register. This is where we're going to receive supply information from producers and reports on producer performance, starting with the tire sector. The registry will be a key tool for the authority's compliance activities and will allow us to publicly report on progress towards implementing the circular economy in Ontario. The registry will also provide much-needed data to support the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in developing evidence-based policies, as Frank mentioned, and it will provide much-needed market intelligence to industry to support business decisions and a baseline to measure provincial performance on diversion. Since we launched the Registry Project last year, we've made excellent progress. We are on time and we are on budget for the tires regulation. We're scheduled to go live on July 3rd. I'm a little bit nervous about that because it's only a couple of weeks away. But I'm nervous in a good way. We've put a lot of effort into getting ready, and we've done a lot of training and preparation, and we feel really comfortable about what's going to happen in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to make sure that as much as possible we're in a position to support the registrants as they start coming in, starting on July 3rd. The Registry Portal is going to be accessed through our website, and we've designed a nice, simple user interface to minimize the administrative burden on your businesses. Throughout the development of the registry, our cybersecurity and data security has been a top priority. We've developed the registry using best practices in cybersecurity, including, for example, two-factor authentication that will be required every time someone logs in as a user. We've developed an access and privacy code that outlines how we're going to protect the commercially sensitive information that's going to be provided through the registry, and the information that's key to us being able to carry out our mandate. As part of our goal to reduce administrative burden, we've developed a tool that allows producers to convert the data that was previously submitted to the Ontario Tire Stewardship in the 18 tire categories that OTS used and to convert that information into the 4 tire categories under the new tires regulation. This tool does all the math for the users as opposed to somebody having to do it ahead of time and making sure that they get it all right. We're also developing regulatory guidance documents to assist in the interpretation and implementation of various components of the tires regulation, and you'll have seen some of the procedures that we've already posted on our website, and there's going to be more to come. Producers will also be able to select the producer responsibility organization or organizations that they've contracted with and identify changes when those contractual relationships change. We recognize that a competitive marketplace was required to make this work really, really well, and we knew that there was going to be the possibility that producers would contract with multiple pros, and we wanted to make sure that the registry provided the necessary flexibility to support this activity in the marketplace. And then for tire service providers, the registry will open for registration on September 4th so that they can meet their October 31st registration deadline. So we've worked closely and effectively with PwC. We've worked with our ministry partners, and we've worked with industry to develop an easy-to-use and straightforward registration and reporting process for our registrants. And as new materials are designated, the registry will be modified to accommodate specific registration and reporting requirements as each new regulation is developed. As registrar, I've had the privilege and responsibility to lead the building of the authority's compliance function. We started by developing a risk-based compliance framework to guide our engagement with regulated parties, which is now posted on our website. It's a progressive approach that tailors the choice of compliance tool to the nature of the non-compliance and is intended to utilize our resources efficiently while maximizing compliance. We begin by using proactive education and awareness as the primary approach to encourage and support voluntary compliance. And then we will move to more focused communication campaigns to address non-compliance issues as they're identified. We've started recruiting and training registry compliance officers. These staff have an impressive array of backgrounds, many with experience in stewardship organizations or in stewardship roles within industry. They understand the challenges that producers face complying with regulations, and their perspectives have been invaluable in developing a compliance function that seeks to support businesses in achieving compliance. We've also developed a code of conduct and a training program for our new officers. We've introduced new policies, practices, and procedures, and implemented technologies for our officers to better support our registrants when we open for registration starting July 3rd. These officers are the authority's front line for registration, reporting, and compliance, and will provide direct support to registrants to help them comply with the new requirements. And, if necessary, they will take enforcement action as well, and we're hoping they never have to do that. We've been busy meeting with stakeholders and working with our ministry partners to support the rollout of the registry. We continue to work with OTS to ensure that the current program continues efficiently and that the wind-up happens smoothly to avoid disruption during transition to the new framework. Our focus over the last several months has been to develop comprehensive communication materials to assist tire registrants in understanding their registration and reporting requirements and what they need to do to be in compliance with the tires regulation. I'm proud and very impressed by the team that has come together at the authority and the tangible process that we've made. The foundational elements of a modern and progressive regulatory regime have been put in place. We will continue to build on this foundation as the Ontario government advances the transition to a circular economy. I'd like to end on a note of thanks to my team, to Frank, to Glenda and the board for their support throughout this exciting startup period. Particularly, I want to thank Glenda for her invaluable contribution at the development table. Her experience has been instrumental in helping us to design an effective registry. The PwC team for their excellent work in deploying the IT solution. Ministry staff for their very collaborative approach on the tire regulation and helping us understand as they developed the regulation what we needed to do to build the registry. And all my colleagues at the authority who've all played critical roles getting us closer to launch date. I also want to thank the stakeholders who participated in some of the focus group activities when we were testing out functionality for the development of the registry. Their feedback helped to improve the look and feel of the functionality. And finally, I want to say thank you to everybody who's called us with really great questions that made us think about what we're doing and how we best meet the compliance requirements that the registrants have to wrestle with. Keep those questions rolling in. It's helping us to develop better materials that will assist all registrants when they come in the door. Thank you very much, and to you.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Frank. At this time, I'd like to open up the session for questions and answers from those in the room and from those online. For those in the room, I would ask that you use one of the two microphones. This will allow those who are participating by webcast to hear your question. When you go to the microphone, please introduce yourself, identify yourself and your affiliation before you pose your question. For those online, please email your questions to info@rpra.ca. One of us will do our best to answer your question. If between Frank, Pat, and myself we are unable to answer your question, we will follow up with you directly afterwards. And as well, depending on the number of questions, if we run out of time, our goal is to wrap up around 11:30. If we run out of time, we will follow up with those online that have sent in questions that we haven't yet got to after the AGM. So with that, I'll open it up for anyone who would like to ask us a question. Does anyone have a question? Maybe we get to go home early.
Good morning.
Hello, Glenn.
How are you?
I'm fine.
My name is Glenn Maidment, and I'm president of the Tire and Rubber Association of Canada. Our members would sell and produce 80% of the tires, passenger tires certainly, that are sold in Canada. As a consequence of what's going on in Ontario and the definition of producer, our members aren't quite as important in that regard, but probably still a third, maybe 40% of the producers in Ontario will be our members. So fair to say that we're a very interested stakeholder in what's going on here now. And I will say to you, compliments to RIPRA and the board for where you've gotten to so far. I will say that I am personally cautiously optimistic that at the end of the day we'll get to where we all want to be and need to be. There's no doubt going to be a few hiccups along the way, and that's to be expected. So no real concern on that front. I've got a million questions, but if I could just, I won't take everybody's time, but just a few this morning. The first, let me start with a compliment, because I think the cover of your annual report is excellent. Whenever I see tire treads, I say to myself, now that's people who love what they're doing and know what they're doing and are having fun with it. And so my compliments on that. I will say I've not yet read all 111 pages of your annual report, but I'm sure I will. But let me just get to just a couple of quick things, if I may. Had some concern, some significant concern on your fees and the approach that you're taking with the RIPRA fees. When you first started this process, you recognized that all of the stakeholders had a role to play, and then there would be fees attached for each of those service providers and the producers themselves. Very, very disappointed when at the end of the day you pulled that approach back and you went with just charging the producers themselves. Ultimately, that represented an additional $400,000 to $500,000 to my members. And I would hope that the board, going forward, would understand and still appreciate that other service providers have a role to play and they should pay accordingly. Your original schedule, yeah, you could make some arguments that it was needed to be changed somewhat, but on balance, it at least did what I thought the intention was, that all industry would have a role to play, but also to pay. Can I ask, for 2019 and beyond, is it your intention that other service providers, including retailers, would in fact pay a portion of the fee to RIPRA?
I'll start and then hand it over to Frank or Pat to add. But from the board's perspective, I do want to say that decision point of whether to charge 2018 fees to everyone or to producers and producer responsibility organizations only was a point of a great deal of discussion. And the decision was very pointedly for 2018 only, with the intention of revisiting that decision in future years. We have not started the discussion on 2019 fees because we haven't yet finalized our 2019 budget, which is the first step required. But I have no doubt that point will come up again when we're considering our 2019 fees. Anything else?
I have nothing to add, although we expect to begin that consultation before the end of the year. And obviously, from the material that you saw that went public, we were very seriously considering applying a fee more broadly. But in this first year, it seemed most appropriate to keep it scoped.
If I may I have one more question?
Yes.
Because I do have a dozen, but thank you for this. The approach that RIPRA is taking relative to their fees to producers is that the fee must be paid directly by the producer to RIPRA. And I sort of get that for year one. That makes a lot of sense for a couple of reasons. But going forward, my recommendation to the RIPRA board would be to allow the producers to pay their pro and allow the pro to pay the RIPRA fee to RIPRA. At the end of the day, I mean, we can talk about this at another time, but at the end of the day, that'll be a better solution, certainly for producers and I think for RIPRA. So I know you didn't accept that argument for 2018, but I would hope going forward the board would at least have a discussion with the industry and understand the implications and understand that ultimately this would be a better solution for RIPRA.
Pat, would you like to respond?
I can certainly provide a comment. When we were designing the registry, it was a very important consideration for us to understand who's responsible for specifically for what. And one of the things that is very clear under the legislation from our perspective is that with individual producer responsibility, they're responsible for what they market in Ontario. And what we didn't know ahead of time is what the different combinations of arrangements that would emerge in the marketplace between producers and pros. We wanted to make sure that we didn't constrain that in any way. So, and we knew that some people were going to do their own management and most would sign up with producer responsibility organizations. So where that left us was that the best people to report on the supply information are the people who are supplying, so that's the producers. And then the fees are pegged to those supply numbers, so while they're reporting their supply numbers, we calculate their fee and they pay their fees. So that's why we set it up the way we did. Whether individual producers want to share that supply information with pros or not, we don't know, and we didn't want to make any assumptions that would lock people into something they didn't want to do. So ultimately, we've created flexibility, and the marketplace can take advantage of that flexibility any way they want, and ultimately, suppliers will continue to provide supply information, and then depending on what the board does with fees year after year, I mean, if it's based on supply, then it'll be based on supply. If it's based on something else, then we'll see what that looks like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions in the room or online? Give us a moment, Glenn. There is a question online coming. Under the new program, I believe that municipalities will not have to register, and I believe what they're talking about here is under the tires regulation, that municipalities do not have to register as a collector. My question is, how will municipalities continue to collect tires and have them transported to a recycling facility? Also, how will they be compensated for the collected tires? And I'll let Pat address that, but I do want to make one preliminary comment, and that is that we at the authority are not involved in the commercial arrangements among service providers and producers and pros, so we're not in a position to comment on the last part of the question, how they will be compensated for the collected tires. But on the question of how will municipalities continue to collect tires and have them transported to a recycling facility? Pat.
Thank you, Linda. So we've had an opportunity on a couple of occasions to talk to our municipal stakeholders on this issue and in a couple of different venues. And I guess the point we've made a couple of times on this issue is, number one, yes, municipalities are not required to register if they're collecting tires. I mean, what follows from that is they're not required to collect tires either, but we recognize that a lot of municipalities do actually want to collect tires. It's part of a service that they provide to their residents. And I guess the third thing that comes into the mix is that under individual producer responsibility, producers need tires. So that means there's a marketplace out there that municipalities can participate in. So if they're collecting tires, there's going to be somebody who's going to want those tires because somebody has to meet collection targets and performance management targets and all of that. So we can't comment on the commercial arrangements, but the opportunity for municipalities to participate in that marketplace will continue just in a way that's similar to what's happening now, but subject to arrangements that they have to make directly with pros or processors or haulers or whomever wants those tires.
Did you want to comment on municipalities as collectors in the registry?
There's nothing that stops the municipality from actually registering if they want to, but they don't have to. The tires that a municipality collects count towards targets because a hauler is picking them up, and that's the requirement, is that a hauler is picking them up, and then those tires get to count. So there's all the flexibility in the world for a municipality to continue to operate. They just have to reach out to the other. The big change, of course, is they're not dealing with OTS anymore, one entity. They're dealing with multiple players in the marketplace. But the good news is there's lots of people in the marketplace that want those tires.
Other questions in the room or online? No more questions online. Glenn, one last opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. RIPRA is a regulator. We understand that, and you're sort of getting your feet about what that is, what that means for you. But the industry, collectively, I don't know of any producer anywhere who supported the notion of the fee holiday. So, but I get it. It's the direction from the minister, and you have to live with that, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But the industry came to you and said, you know, if we really want to make this transition more seamless, that we would move the fee holiday from October to December time period and move it closer into the year, July, August, September. That would at least respect the minister's decision on the fee holiday, but allow for less disruption in what really is the most critical point of the sales year in the industry, October, November, December. You are all buying winter tires. Yes? Yes? You're all buying winter tires. So it's extremely disruptive to have this fee holiday during this period. The industry said collectively, don't do it, move it earlier in the year, and you chose not to. I know you're the regulator. You can do what you want. But my question is, why didn't you move it when you had the chance to?
I'll start. I'm sure Frank has something to offer, but I think two considerations that were discussed at the board was that moving it earlier increases risk for OTS in terms of ensuring they have sufficient resources. to wind up the program and then wind up the corporation. And the other consideration is that we know that OTS has been waiting on a number of external decisions that might affect the fee elimination date, most particularly decisions from CRA that we're still waiting on. And so allowing time for CRA to go through that process seemed prudent. And that meant delaying the start of the fee elimination period. Frank?
I have nothing to add to that.
Right. Other questions online? Thank you. What will happen to auto recyclers that are registered collectors and haulers currently? Will there be any type of incentive still? Pat?
I had an opportunity to present at the Auto Recyclers Conference as well, and this question came up there as well. So, and what we said there was that auto recyclers are going to be collectors based on the definition of, that's in the regulation. So they're required to register and indicate where their sites are, and we'll be publishing that on the website. With respect to incentive fees, again, that's for the marketplace to determine. As I said, in the same way as I said to municipalities, under individual producer responsibility, producers need all the tires they can get, including the ones that auto recyclers have, and so they're going to come looking for those tires, and the commercial arrangements they want to make with respect to the tires they're collecting is for them to work out with the people who want those tires.
Any questions in the room? Any more questions online? Glenn's back at the microphone.
Promise, last question.
Okay.
So the registry starts July 3rd for producers and continues through to the end of August. Personally, I'm willing to take a bet on this, but I'd be shocked if more than 100 producers sign up by the end of August. Now, we know that OTS, in their data books today, we have over 700 producers paying fees into OTS, and my guess is with the new definitions, there'll probably be 1,000 or more that actually will be obligated. I'm wondering what your strategy is come the end of August, your communication strategy. Come the end of August, when you see that you have, let's say, 100 producers registered, and you know there's at least 700 or 800 yet to register and be registered by the end of the year. Do you have your communications plan in place? Because clearly, from our perspective, I mean, our members are going to comply. They will be first out of the gate. Well, they're not going to do it July 3rd. They'll do it August 31st. Because why would you pay? Why would you pay early? Why would you pay early when, as soon as you register, you got to pay? So I think that they're going to pay at the end of August is what I expect. But my members will absolutely be looking to you for your strategy to be out there communicating to all the free riders to get on board. So is your comm strategy in place?
Pat.
Yes, it is.
No. More details.
I've seen it. Yeah.
In fact, he insisted on me showing it to him. So I did. Yeah. I mean, we have a strategy that started a couple of months ago. We've already rolled out some very basic communications that talk about timing. We have a series of communications that are going to roll out. We have developed a list of everybody that we think might be captured, and we know there's probably a few people out there that aren't on our list, and we'll be working to figure out who those are as well. Yeah, they're obviously one of the contingencies is that not everybody knows that they're supposed to register and they haven't shown up by August 31st, and we will be communicating with them as well. Yeah, absolutely.
I will add that communications in general is an area where we're very dependent on advice and insights and intelligence we get from people out in the marketplace. It's fundamental to everybody's success. So we're getting a lot of feedback. Please give it to us in real time so we can be adjusting our strategy as we go.
And I would note that on the OTS website, they had a page that allowed people who are registered to talk about people who aren't registered, and they could do it by name, or they could do it anonymously. So we're quite happy to receive similar information as well.
We have another question from an online participant. Will this new program make it easier for processors to accept the tires, as it seems to already be an issue as we approach the windup? This is from an auto recycler who says they are unable to find processors to take their tires now. Frank or Pat?
I know that OTS has a process in place right now when someone is having some difficulty having a hauler show up to pick up the tires. So OTS is in the process of, has a process to call up haulers and make that happen. And that's because OTS is delivering the tire management program. We will not be delivering the tire management program, and so if a processor or an auto recycler or someone else has tires that they're accumulating and somebody isn't collecting them, I would say a couple of things. One is, again, with individual producer responsibility, if somebody wants those tires, we will be making sure that everybody who's registering, that their name and role and contact information is automatically posted to our website. So if someone's looking for a hauler or a processor or any of the service providers, that information will be published on our website as people register. And secondly, do give us a call, because we can make some calls to find out what's going on. We can't promise results, but we will certainly investigate if there seems to be some glitches happening in the marketplace, because obviously we're concerned about what's happening in the marketplace, and we want to make sure that this works.
Are there any other questions from anyone in the room or online? No. In that case, I'm going to give you back a little bit of time and wrap up this annual general meeting. Please do contact us if you have any follow-up questions or comments you'd like to share with us after this meeting. You've heard from Pat that he's eager to receive your calls, and I know Frank is as well. Audio and video recordings of today's proceedings will be available on our website early next week. This is, because it's a webcast, it's archived, and that will be available. I would invite all of you to stay for coffee and conversation. Please seek out and introduce yourself to the board that was introduced earlier, and to the members of staff that are here today. And thank you for joining us. We look forward to the opportunities to continue to collaborate with you over the next year, and hopefully see you at our AGM next year. Thank you very much.